You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. In American society, growth is normally equated with good. The bigger, the better. Since the 20th century, cities in the United States, as opposed to European and Asian cities, are characterized by sprawling suburbs, that means they must constantly expand outward, transforming what was formerly farmland into suburban land. Over the last year, the wisdom of this sort of tendency has come into focus around plans proposed to develop western Hamilton County. But you don't have to live in Whitewater Township to see the impact. Whether you live, shop, work, or simply commute anywhere near I-275 Beltway, you know the issues. Roads completely incapable of handling new traffic, fields that were planted in soybeans last year are now being graded into suburban lots. What were acre upon acre of tree farms 5 or 6 years ago have given way to huge business parks. We will devote all of Newsmakers this morning to the issues raised by urban sprawl. Al Gore and other politicians believe the issue is potent enough to sway the all-important suburban voter and expect to make it a central plank in their stump speeches. In March, the Cincinnati Historical Society brought an urban historian from Cornell University to Cincinnati. I had a chance to sit down with Tom Hanchett. Here is a part of that interview that focused on clarifying the proactive role of the federal government in the role it played in shaping the market forces to create the American suburban world.
There is a fair amount of federal subsidy that has gone into building the whole suburban world. We wouldn't have the tremendous suburbanization after World War II without interstates, without FHA housing subsidies, which brought the middle class out to the suburbs in majority, which had never happened before. And the thing that I've looked at is a tax policy that went in the 1950s called accelerated depreciation, which gave sizable tax breaks for new construction. And so people began building shopping centers and strip malls and office parks, at least in part for the tax benefits.
The American move to the suburbs has been underway since at least the mid-1870s, and there is no reason to believe that this latest concern about its impact will reverse that trend. The question is, can new government investments in things like light rail channel those forces into what Hanchett and others like to call smart growth?
It is not a no-growth situation. We will continue to build new things. Those kind of investments will be made. We need to shape them so that they create the kind of society we want.
To talk about the issue of urban expansion as it is framed in Greater Cincinnati, I am joined this morning by two guests. Glenn Brand is the director of the Cincinnati office of the National Sierra Club, which has 14,000 members in Ohio. Jay Buchert has been a member of the Hamilton County Planning Commission for 10 years. Jay is also a developer himself and is the owner of American Heritage Homes. Jay, welcome back to Newsmakers. Glenn, welcome to Newsmakers.
Good morning.
Let's try to get some clarification here right off the top. The term sprawl is used, and depending on how the inflection of your voice goes, it may sound like a descriptive word or a negative word, a judgmental word. Is there a technical definition? What is urban sprawl in your mind?
Well, we refer to it as suburban sprawl, first of all, because that's really what we're dealing with now. But simply put, sprawl is runaway, out of control, unplanned development.
So runaway, out of control, unplanned development. Therefore, there can be expansion if it's controlled, planned?
Absolutely. In fact, you know, that's what these smart growth plans are all about. It's not no growth. In fact, that's why we call it smart growth. It indicates, of course, that sprawl has been dumb growth, and we've seen the way that sprawl hurts us all in Greater Cincinnati. Everyone who's lived here for any length of time understands that.
We'll come back to that. Jay, do you agree that what we and other American cities experience is unplanned, and you've been part of the Planning Commission, unplanned, bad, dangerous growth of these suburban areas?
Sprawl is mainly seen as continual development further and further out into the outlying counties beyond the major core of a metropolitan area. The inner part of that core and inside the Beltway, for example, those are the resources that should be reused. Those are the resources that exist. And those are the resources that we really should use first before we move further and further out, county upon a county. And of course, in this tri-state region, that includes Indiana and Kentucky.
Okay, now you're saying that inside the Beltway, growth can go sort of, anything there wouldn't be part of sprawl. Is that
well, if you don't have growth there and you've had a lack of growth there, okay, you need to look at those resources and the use of those resources first before you go further and further out in the north into Preble County, in the west outside of Dearborn now into Ripley County, down into Grant and Pendleton counties, over into Brown and Adams County. You need to look at the core first and use the resources you have there first.
And
that is smart growth, building closer in where the infrastructure already exists.
And is that how the Western Hamilton County plan fits into that, as a way of developing this very large 1/3 of the county, which has basically no sewers, no water, very little development, very underdeveloped area? Is that how you would see it?
Yeah, the potential there for the sewer and water all exists. It's adjacent to, it hasn't been expanded. The sprawl has actually leapfrogged Western Hamilton County. Now the idea is to look at Western Hamilton County and to realize first that it is going to be developed. I mean, the value will be there and the use will be there over the next 20 years. How do we plan for that, and how does that plan make sense in the context of the overall use of the region?
Glenn, you and your organization have been working with people in Western Hamilton County to oppose this plan. How would your view about the development of this inner area inside the Beltway, specifically Western Hamilton County, differ from Jay's?
Well, let's back up for a moment. Western Hamilton County is the last relatively undeveloped semi-rural section in Hamilton County. We have lost everything else. It's very important at this point to save as much open space, green space, farmland as possible. That's why this plan is not a good plan.
Why is it important?
Well, it's important for people. It's maybe not important for developers and road builders, but it's extremely important for the quality of life for folks. Now, as I mentioned before, there's going to be great cost for this plan, as with all pro-sprawl plans. And frankly, this plan is not as bad as the kinds of things that we've been doing in the last 40 years. It probably will not produce Fields Erdel Road or Beachmont or Coleraine Avenue, but still, it's going to bring suburban sprawl. What we need out there is a smart growth plan which is going to preserve open space and farmland, have agricultural zoning. We're going to preserve those hillsides, protect the aquifer, stop more traffic congestion from polluting more and more of our air quality. What we really need is to rethink the way we do this. Now, we can have growth.
Let's do some specifics here.
Sure.
You know, on the one side you say we got to protect some green space. Well, in Hamilton County generally, I mean, as the nation goes, we have a very large park system. The city of Cincinnati has a fairly developed park system. So the developed parts of Hamilton County already have they've made a commitment to green space, which isn't necessarily true, for example, in Butler County, where I know green space is hardly nothing is protected.
Right.
But in Hamilton County, or in the case of Western Hamilton County protecting farms, are these viable farms? Why are we protecting? Is there a way of doing some of this and still having smart growth, and what would that look like? Would that be suburban? What's that going to look like? And what's wrong with the plan that's been developed?
Well, I'll tell you about that. You know, LDR, which was the name of the firm that did this plan, they presented a number of scenarios. Now, the Hamilton Planning Commission and the Collaborative, they're the ones who selected this high growth plan. Now, one of the options was a low growth plan. Now, I'm not sure that a low growth plan by itself would take care of the problem, because it depends where you put people, where you develop, and not just the amount of people. But that's clearly the place to start, and that called for an 18% growth rate over the next 20 years.
You favor the low growth plan at minimum, but maybe even lower than the low growth plan.
Yeah, if we don't have a smart growth comprehensive land use plan, then 18% could also mean terrific sprawl, because sprawl is about wasting our resources.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Doesn't that, though, feed into what Jay was just saying? Pardon me, I'm fighting cold. That if we have a low-growth plan in Western Hamilton County, we are just continuing to feed growth in Claremont, Butler, Warren County, northern Kentucky.
This plan would just have us compete for sprawl. It would not do anything about the sprawl that's taking place in Warren and Claremont and Butler. All it would do is add to the sprawl. You know, this plan, you asked for specifics, this plan calls for the destruction of 50% of the farmland by 2005. Now that's 13,500 acres. You know, 27,000 of the total 29,000 acres of farmland in Hamilton County are in western Hamilton County. We have lost enough. People are sick and tired of seeing their countryside and farmland destroyed. This plan is going to promote that. Now there's good things in this plan and we can save it and we can change it.
Jay, why did you choose the high growth? You're on the Planning Commission. Why, and I presume, do you favor the high growth side of this?
No, we chose the medium growth. We chose the plan offered by the consultants and by the consortium. You got to remember, the collaborative consisted of elected officials and planning officials from 10 communities in western Hamilton County. It wasn't just citizens at large, it was elected officials who answered to those citizens and people involved in planning primarily that made up the steering committee from 10 communities, 6 townships, 4 municipalities and villages. They chose medium growth. The experience in western Hamilton County over the last 20 years has been about a 40% growth rate. This plan over the next 20 years calls for a 35% growth rate,
so
which is 5%
you would slow the growth.
Less growth. But what the plan recognizes is economic and market realities of what's truly going to take place. Without a plan, there are those that predict and those that have surveys that show that the growth will even accelerate more, especially if we have an economy for the next 10 years like we had for the last 7. You're going to see tremendous growth in western Hamilton County. The commissioners wisely said, we'll hire a consultant, we'll get the communities together, and we'll agree on a framework from which each of these communities will then develop their own land plan. This is not a plan for western Hamilton County. It is a framework for the 10 communities in Hamilton County to begin to decide what type of land plan they want to grow that community over the next 20 years, and it gives direction and it gives specific densities. The densities are on an average, other than a small portion of Harrison Township, 2 houses per acre of the acres that will actually be developed. And that doesn't mean on every acre in all of western Hamilton County.
I don't want to get stuck in Whitewater Township here, so I want to. We got viewers from all over the metropolitan area. Let's take a little bit bigger view here. No matter where this growth, sprawl is occurring, what's the problem with sprawl?
Well, Jay talks about the economic realities. Well, the economic realities of sprawl is that it raises our taxes. It costs money.
How does it raise our taxes?
Well, because the average sprawl development, residential sprawl home out in an outlying area, costs more than it pays in taxes to service. And on average, it's $1.41 to service for every $1 paid. That's in Ohio.
What are the services that,
well, we're talking about
suburban
we're
homeowner?
We're talking about sewer, water, police, schools, emergency services, garbage pickup, recycling,
and
whatever
you're
it may
saying
be.
That the people who are out there, and I know a lot of suburban homeowners who say, boy, I pay a lot of taxes.
That's right.
They are not covering that.
That's right. In fact, existing homeowners pay for the difference, and that difference ends up being the developer and road builder profit. Now, it's not that they're demons here, but what they're doing is taking advantage of an out-of-control situation. Basically, the system is so out of control that it encourages this kind of development. That land out there is not cheap. It is not affordable unless we put those services there. That's why there's this speculation in land out there, because we are, as this Western Hamilton County plan purports to do, puts the major infrastructure, which is paid for by existing taxpayers. By the way, the Midwest average is $1.21 to every dollar to service for every dollar paid in tax. It's even worse in Ohio because we have higher subsidies. And the subsidies, we can go through all the levels of subsidies, but this has been well studied by Ohio State University, for example, just recently.
Jay, what do you think about that?
Those numbers are averages of all houses, and what you have to realize is there are recent studies out of Texas A&M which show that the majority of the growth of large houses today being built in most major metropolitan areas on the outside pay more, and actually more than pay for themselves, and subsidize the houses that were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which have lower evaluations. Those larger houses actually have less children in the public school system too. It's a 0.5 average compared to a 0.15 of 25 years ago.
But one of the things that is clear, if you go to a place up in Butler County like Lakota School District, where they're just building school buildings, I mean, they've built 2 high schools in 1 year, and they keep building grade schools. I don't know how many new buildings they've built the last 5 years. So they've obviously invested a huge amount in schools. At the same time, when you've got the center city, city of Cincinnati, some of the worst crumbling school systems in the world. So, I mean, where you spend the money and the total, how you take the total view, does have an impact here. Would you agree with that?
That's true, and that's one of the reasons if you increase the economic vitality of the core, I mean, so goes Hamilton County, so goes the region. Hamilton County is shrinking in growth population. While some people have received notices that their tax evaluations are going up, there have been many in the first ring suburbs that have received notification their tax rate is going down. That's not healthy for Hamilton County. Hamilton County, 50 cents or better on a dollar is spent in the area of human services and other levies supporting services for people, and 20 to 25% is in the criminal justice system. When you add those two together, that's 75 cents on a dollar supporting problems. Hamilton County can't continue to do that. It must grow its tax base. It must revitalize not only the inner city and the first ring suburbs, but the county itself. We can't continue to lose tax base and population.
Glenn, would you agree that we have to reinvest in the core county and the core city in
Yeah, absolutely. That's what smart growth really means. It's where we choose to use our investment. We could subsidize growth out there at our own expense, raising our taxes, losing farmland, green space, making our air and water pollution, traffic congestion worse, or we can take that money, reinvest it in our neighborhoods now to make them stronger, better, and safer neighborhoods. The reason why crumbling cities, this is a pattern all over the United States, the reason why the core is deteriorating is because of sprawl. As people move out to other areas, they take with them their tax base. Services are hard pressed. They have to raise taxes to maintain the same level of services, and it's a spiral. And that's what sprawl causes.
Jay, I don't know that you totally disagree with that, because 2 years, or not 2 years, 2 times ago when you were on here, you were a major player in City Rama, and I just want to point that out, trying to get people to see that there is downtown home ownership possible in new homes. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you're not opposed to that?
No, our company has made a commitment. We've developed lots and built over 150 homes in the city of Cincinnati in the last 5 years. So we've made a commitment to return people back to the cities, not only the city core itself, but the neighborhoods of the city. Let's get back to the idea of loss of farmland. It's no surprise to anybody that Hamilton County is an urban county. It's not a suburban county, nor is it an agricultural county. It's no surprise that between 1900 and the year 2000 that we've lost a big share of our agricultural base, and in the last quarter of this century we've lost an even huger share in percentage. It will be no shock to anybody that between the year 2000 and 2100 that we probably lose the rest of our agricultural base. But this is not a threat when you figure that if you drive 30 minutes north or 30 minutes west, south, or east, you get into counties that have the highest percentage of agricultural base compared to counties throughout the country, which includes Kansas and Iowa. So, you know, it's not like we have this terrible threat against the loss of agriculture base. It was no surprise to anybody on Manhattan Island that they lost a huge percentage of their agriculture base at some point in time.
Okay. We got to take a break.
Yet that New York is still a huge agricultural state.
New York is, okay, versus New York. Okay, we're going to come back. We're not finished yet, so stay tuned. After the break, we'll take a look at some proposals to deal with this sort of thing and what the two of these people think about those proposals. Welcome back. Our continuing discussion of urban sprawl. I want to start out, Glenn, in this part. There's been some proposals by a variety of people, including the Sierra Club, about what to do about this. One of the proposals is something that, as I understand, Portland has adopted, which is setting a boundary on development. Would you explain very quickly how that works?
Well, a better model probably is the Maryland model.
Okay.
It's similar, but I think Maryland is probably the way that most people in the United States are going about this. Maryland has decided to take away the main subsidy for sprawl. This is to somehow balance this out-of-control situation. And what they're saying is you have an urban service area or an agricultural protection zone or green space zone, whatever term you use. And the idea is that you don't fund infrastructure cost outside of that area. And it's just a matter of where you choose to invest. Now, this is going to help strengthen those existing neighborhoods.
So when you say
the state will not contribute to roads outside of that area. They will, however, inside that area. That same would be for sewers and
so in the case of Maryland, you're saying that they would say the state would then draw these lines around cities?
The communities, the cities themselves do that.
Draw the lines, and then no investment in infrastructure beyond that.
No public investment. Now, private investors can do whatever they want, but the fact of the matter is, without the public investment, the subsidy, we have a disincentive for that kind of sprawl.
Jay, what do you think about that?
Well, let's talk both about Portland and about Maryland, or Oregon and Maryland is a good way to put it, because it's a state initiative. But Portland is the shining example because it's been around the longest, and it's the oldest because it started in 1985. The average median price of a house in Portland was $10,000 under the average metro city in 1985. In 1995, it was $20,000 over. And it's real simple. If you draw a ring and say you can only develop land inside this ring, the price goes up. They have the dubious honor of being the second least affordable area in the United States of America for housing. They're right under San Francisco, okay? So all it's really done is drive up the prices. The second thing, in 95 neighborhoods, it increased the densities. In some places along their metro stops, the density is high as 38 units per acre. Can you imagine Sycamore Township with light rail going up the 71 corridor accepting 38 units per acre? You know, there's a big difference between what people in Oregon will do and what people in Ohio will do.
Are people in Oregon unhappy with that?
Yes, you're now seeing, there was a recent study that had to be commissioned by the governor to look at the effects of the growth boundaries. And what it showed in the 95 neighborhoods, people were saying, we've had enough density, we've had enough infill, we've had enough new people, and we don't want it either. And that's a natural instinct. In other words, the idea is to use it inside, but if you draw rings and cause too much, then people reject it.
Glenn, is that a fair evaluation?
No, it's not. There's a number of myths and deceptive statements that he just made about the Portland situation, which home builders are saying all over the country. Number one, places that have not had urban growth boundaries out west have seen a greater price increase. Salt Lake City, for example, the homes doubled in the same period. There was a study in California, not to burden us with studies, but a study in California. They took a look at cities with urban growth boundaries, smart growth initiatives, and those without. There was no difference in the price. In fact, in Portland, its quality of life is very high. It's one of the best places in the United States to live. That's one of the reasons why it's so expensive to live there, just one, because there are too few nice places like Portland, livable cities with good mass transit where people can walk and are forced to drive everywhere.
We can quarrel
even with the doubling in Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City's cost of housing is still well below the average metro area in the country. So yes, to use percentages that it doubled is one thing, but it's still it's equal with what we have here in Cincinnati, which is well below the average of high-priced housing.
Okay, I'm not going to get into warring studies. Another area is, it seems to me, we can have planning for specific counties, but what we're faced with is, this is a regional problem that in our particular region doesn't just go beyond several counties, crosses state lines. What do we do about that? You're on the Hamilton County Planning Commission. Does Warren County, Butler County, Kenton County, do they have planning commissions that are capable of handling these sorts of issues?
Yes, they do.
And do they talk with you?
Yes, well, there is a communication, and of course with this whole movement towards regionalism, there's a greater communication among planning commissions and all of the counties to look at the region as a whole and do what's best. But Northern Kentucky has one of the most successful. Two counties have combined together, and they do the planning not only for the unincorporated area of those counties, but also the municipalities. Boone County does an admirable job. Warren and Butler both have good planning commissions and have worked very hard to make sure that their infrastructure and their roadway improvements
How much regional planning is there?
Well, regional planning within the context of their own county, they do very well. The combination of combining sewer, engineering, planning in Claremont County has almost been a model of how to bring all these things together and make them all work together under one single plan.
I'm down to about 20 seconds, but how well do we do at regional planning?
There's been a tremendous failure by the planning commissions all over the tri-state area, and we know this. Our land use has grown 53% in the last 20 years, and our population has barely grown. It's been a terrible failure. Out of control development is continuing apace. We can do something about it. We don't have to wait to the state. Hamilton County, for example, could right now begin smart growth policies.
Obviously, lots of disagreements. This is a fundamental issue that I promise you we will come back to. Thanks for being here this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next Sunday for discussion with Dave Phillips, the retiring head of Downtown Cincinnati, Inc. The reverse side of the suburban growth coin is the future of the downtown. We leave you this morning with a little music from the Clyde Brown Trio. For the next 4 Thursday nights from 6 till 8 in the evenings, the Wyoming Business Association will sponsor a Jazz on the Green concert series. The Clyde Brown Trio is featured July 22nd. Enjoy.
When autumn